In this video, we're going to show you exactly how to convince a landlord to allow you to use their property on Airbnb.
We're going to go through the different reasons as to why a landlord would even allow you to rent the property in the first place.
Well, first of all, we would pay rent on time, and we'd most likely be looking to get a 3 to 5 year lease with the landlord, and we would be looking to extend this at the end of the tenancy. We would most likely be the last tenants the landlord would ever have to deal with.
So we would be taking on the property using a company-let agreement. Now, because we're a company, we'd be making sure that there would be no rent arrears. That saves the landlord a lot of money, because with families, there comes a time where the rent isn't being paid on time and the landlord is having to chase up the tenants for the rent. Because we're a professional company, we'll make sure that the rent is paid on time, because we would never go into any property deal where the property would not generate income.
We as the company will clean the property, will maintain the property, and we do not charge any agency fees. Whereas if a landlord was to go to a estate agent and he wanted them to manage the property for them, they would charge 10 to 15% of the landlord's rent per month. We charge nothing.
Depending on the type of property that would be taken on from the landlord, we might also give a free refurbishment. Now, this might mean that we're changing carpets, the laminate flooring, giving the walls a fresh, nice white lick of paint. And they're usually very happy because no other agent would have done that for them, and it really saves the landlord time and the money also to getting that work completed. The reason why it would benefit us to do these tasks for the landlord is because it gives them a very easy life, but also it ensures that the property is going to be ready to hotel standards for our guests when they move in. And also, to add on, no other tenant would be willing to go this extra mile for the landlord, and we would be lifting the value of the property, which means the landlord will always be happy and property will stay up to market value and trends.
So now that you know all the reasons why a landlord would want to accept us and allow us to use their property for Airbnb purposes, now we need to think of what we need to say to them. So when you're on the phone to the landlord and you're introducing this new business model to him, you don't want to say it as you're benefiting from it. You want to say it in a way where the landlord will be benefiting from it. So let's say I'm on the call to the landlord. I'd say what I'd be looking to do, and then I would then say, does that sound fair enough? No one has ever said, no, that does not sound fair enough. So this allows us to find a middle ground with the landlord and come to an agreement.
So when you're approaching a landlord, you never want to start off by saying, hey, Mr. Landlord, I want to put your property on Airbnb. If I was a landlord on the other side listening to that, I would immediately say no. If I didn't have any prior knowledge about Airbnb and I'm just basing it off what I've seen maybe in the news, then you might resort to thinking that the property is going to be used for parties, very big nuisance gatherings, maybe even some illegal activities. Positioning is everything when it comes to sales, because that's what you're doing. You're selling your services to the landlord, but you've got to be clever with the way you're going around it. So when you speak to a landlord, the way you would approach him is by talking about the different markets that you might be willing to go through. For instance, you might approach the landlord by saying, hey, Mr. Landlord, I will be looking to rent this property from you for my corporate staff, or I'm looking to rent this property because I have family who are relocating in the area. If you're positioning yourself where you're working directly with corporate workers or relocating families, can you see why the positioning of that sounds much better than, hey, Mr. Landlord, I'm going to put your property on Airbnb?
I'm going to quickly name you the types of people that would stay in your Airbnb. First is students. So a lot of international students tend to temporarily stay in Airbnbs while their visas are getting sorted out for their accommodation with the university. During that time, a lot of students have this problem where there's a delay in their visa. So that's where we come in and we offer them short-term accommodation for them to stay in while they're studying at university. Second would be contractors. Now, if you live in a city, usually you would see a lot of construction sites in the area, and contractors are the ones that work here. They usually relocate from, let's say, somewhere up north and they relocate down to south, or it could be the other way around. They usually need somewhere to stay during this time. The construction sites usually take 2 to 3 years or even less than that. But the main thing is that they need somewhere to stay while they're here working. It does not make sense at all for them to commute from one city to the other, because the contractors, they get really tired at the end of the day. They want somewhere where they could just come to a temporary house, a home away from home, sit back, relax, watch some Netflix, and just prepare for the next day of work. And the third could be groups. Let's say there's 4 people in the group. Normally, if they're staying in a city, they would book individual hotels or try to book a bigger hotel. Usually the cost of this would be very high. So instead, they would go to Airbnb and find an affordable apartment or house and rent it out for £100. That works out to be £25 per person, compared to 4 people booking £100 a night hotel rooms, which could be £400. So how can you now use this information and gather it up and give it to the landlord and make them say yes to you?
So what you would need to do essentially is choose which market you want to go down in terms of maybe, let's say, the family relocations, as I just mentioned, and then you would pitch that to the landlord.
You also want to build rapport with the landlord. When you meet him in person at the viewing, you would ask him questions of what is he looking for in a tenant? What's the reason of him purchasing this property? Is it for investment purposes, or has he just moved out of the property? What was his previous tenants like? These questions will really take you far and make you understand what the problem the landlord has been having and how we can be the solution for it.
You need to understand the landlord, the person that you're speaking to. Every single landlord is going to be very different and also similar in some type of way. And you need to make sure that you're solving the problem that your landlord has. For example, a landlord might have a very troublesome time with their tenants, them not paying their rent on time. Now, the solution for that might be that you're going to be paying rent guaranteed every single month, and you might put that in the contract. However, there is no point solving the problem of giving them a free refurb if their property does not need a free refurb and they're looking for the guaranteed rent. You need to make sure that whatever solution you are providing to the landlord is actually suiting their needs.
Now, we want to be very honest with you. You might get a lot of rejections from this, but the main thing about getting rejections is getting feedback from it. So when you hear back from the landlord and unfortunately he did not want to go ahead with you, you want to then ask him why did he go ahead with the other tenant, and then you'll then find out what exactly he was really looking for, and then you can use that same reasoning on your next landlord, and which this will then increase the chances of you getting that first yes.
Not every single deal is a deal that you should invest in. We see a lot of people making this mistake where there's a property that they see on Rightmove, Zoopla or OpenRent, and that property does not actually suit your own criteria, but you guys go and inquire with the property anyway. In other words, make sure that you're not emotionally investing and that the property that you actually want to go for is worth your time, and the landlord will also get something out of it. The last thing that you want to do is have a horrific experience where you're going ahead for a property that doesn't meet your numbers, the deal doesn't stack, and then in the end you have to pull out, and so does the landlord.
This is a people's business and it's a relationship business as well. You really need to make sure that you're not speaking to the landlord about business. You're speaking to him about who he is as a type of person, find out who they are, crack some jokes with them, and just create a friendly relationship with them. And this will take you really far because this will start to build trust between you both. If you have the trust in place and the confidence there as well, this will really increase your chances of convincing the landlord to use their property for Airbnb.
If you found this video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel so that we can keep making these kind of videos for you. And if there's anything else that you would like to see in detail, then make sure to drop it in the comments below and we can get that made for you guys. See you in the next one.